Hi everyone, welcome back. We are now on day 4 of week 5. I am so glad you are back with me, and I hope you are having as much fun with this poetry unit as I am. So today we're going to follow along the same agenda. We're going to be learning some new poetry devices, and we're going to be learning some new vocabulary within our poem. But first, let's go back and review what we've done these past 3 days. We have made a chart of poetic devices. By now, you should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on there. Today, we're going to add terms 6 and 7. You should have all of this filled in for the first 5 terms. We have learned about alliteration, rhyme or rhyming, rhythm, onomatopoeia, and personification. Today, we're going to be adding to that list. I also want you to go back to the RPS at homepage and pull up our Common Lit poem for today. So you will need that poem, and you will also need your chart and something to write with for today, like the past 3 days. Let's go over our agenda for today. All right, so here we are, week 5, day 4. And we have been talking about vocabulary and poetry as well. So today I'm going to introduce today's learning goal, or our I can statement. We're going to learn some new vocabulary, fill in that chart. We're going to read our poem for today, which is entitled Mountains, and we're going to discuss that vocabulary. We are then going to review, and then you are going to go back to the RPS at homepage and read the poem I have assigned to you and answer the questions there. So let's go over our I can statement. Our I can statement is I can identify and differentiate between a simile and a metaphor in a poem. So we're first going to be finding similes and or metaphors in our poem today. And then I also want you to be able to know the difference between a simile and a metaphor, because they are very similar, but I'm going to teach you the difference between them. All right, so let's define simile and metaphor. So go ahead and get out your chart so you can write these on here. So first, a simile is comparing two unlike things using like or as. So the simile will have either like or as in the sentence. An example of a simile is an emerald as green as grass, a ruby red as blood. So both of those used as when they were comparing two things. A metaphor is the same thing. It is comparing two unlike things, but it does not use the terms like or as. It'll compare them without like or as. So an example of that is fame is a bee. It has a song. It has a song. Ah, too, it has a wing. So it was comparing two things, but it did not use the words like or as. I want you to go ahead and pause the video and fill in your chart, your definitions for these two terms. All right, one way that I remember the difference between a simile and a metaphor, because they are so alike, is that simile, the second letter is an I. The second letter in like is also an I. So you can remember that a simile uses like in the statement, because the second letter is an I and the second letter is an I in simile. Also, as the last letter is an S, the first letter is S in simile. So you can remember that a simile has those similar letters as like and as. So that's the way you can remember that simile uses like or as. Metaphor does not. All right, let's go on to some vocabulary that we'll see in our poem today. Again, the name of our poem is Mountains. These are some terms. You don't have to write these down. You can if you want to. These are some terms that we will see in the poem. Just keep them in the back of your mind as we are reading. First word is loom, and that means to appear in a large, strange, or frightening form. Next word is cower, and that is to crouch down in fear. Next word is pristine. That means in perfect condition. Next word is timeless. And we know that the suffix less means without, and timeless means not affected by the passing of time. And then our last word is blistered, painful, swelling on the surface of something. Sometimes we'll get blisters on our feet from new shoes, or we'll get them on our hands from doing yard work. All right, so let's get into our poem for today. So here's our poem for today. And remember, we are focusing on similes and metaphors. Simile compares two things with, like, or as. Metaphor, we'll do it without. So we're going to keep those in mind while we're reading and look for either a simile or a metaphor, comparing two things that are not alike. So let's get started. Mountains. I'm going to try my best on this name. Rukai by Rukai Henderson. Tall and bold like a castle, looming in the dark. They rise to a towering height as everything beneath cowers in fright. Covered in a blanket of silvery mist, you feel as though kissed by the cold, bitter wind as it rushes past. The snow-peaked tops are like pure, pristine crystals, timeless in all their beauty. You can smell, feel, taste, and hear all the earth around you. The sound of birds chirping like music boxes, the taste of juicy berries bursting with flavor, the smell of fresh pine air, and the feeling of pine needles, which, I declare, feel great on your sore, blistered feet. All right, so in this poem, I can find two examples of either a simile or a metaphor. First one is in stanza 1, line 1. If you look at that line, it says tall and bold like a castle. So the title of this poem is Mountain. So the tall and bold is talking about a mountain. They're comparing the mountain to a castle. So tall and bold like a castle. This uses the term like, which means it's what? A simile or a metaphor? If you said simile, you are absolutely correct. Remember, like has that I, simile has the I, similes use like or as. So tall and bold like a castle. This is a simile. If it did not use the word like, then it would be a metaphor. All right, I want you to look in the poem. There is another simile or metaphor. I want you to find it, pause the video, and find it. And also think about whether it is a simile or metaphor and how do you know that? All right, so you should have found another one. Now I've got to find it. Oh, here it is. All right, so we're in stanza 3. Remember, stanzas are like paragraphs. Line 11, the sound of birds chirping like music boxes. That is our next one. Is that a simile or a metaphor? Right, it is a simile. And how do we know that? Because it uses the word like. Similes use the word like or as, excuse me. A metaphor would not have that. Now, unfortunately, there is no metaphors in here, but on your chart, I want you to go back. I want you to fill in an example for simile, and I want you to fill in an example for metaphor. Simile, you can use one of the two examples from this poem, or you can come up with your own. Metaphor, you will have to come up with your own for that one. So go ahead and take a minute, pause the video, and fill in your examples for simile and metaphor. All right, also in that poem, you should have listened for the other terms that we've learned this week, like alliteration, rhyme, rhythm, onomatopoeia, personification. I don't think there was any onomatopoeia or personification, but always look for those poetic devices when you are reading poetry. So today we learned the difference between a simile or a metaphor, and we also know how to identify one when it is in a poem or writing. Tomorrow we are going to move on. We are going to learn our last 2 terms for our poetic devices. We're going to learn some new vocabulary in our poem as well. And I look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. Please go do your independent practice work on the RPS at home page. It is another poem. Read the poem, look for our poetic devices in that poem. Identify them as you read, answer the questions, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye.